What's up and welcome to the channel. My name is Headshot and thank you guys for joining us. Today we have a special treat for you. Two pistols from 1943, the middle of World War II, fighting for two very different sides, two very different causes, but we have them both on the table here today to share with you guys, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this. I know this is going to be a fun review. We're going to have a lot to talk about, and we're going to do pros and cons, shooting, and everything you need to know about these two guns. Now, there will be some things that I actually leave out of this review because we have separate reviews on each one of the guns. So you can go over and check those separate reviews out if you want to know more about each one. But we are going to cover a lot. So let's go ahead and get started. And of course, if you don't see your name at the end of this video, become a Shot Team Power Patron. You guys get to see behind the scenes of these two guns and many more, and you can see your name at the end of the video, which is a cool way for you guys to show your support of our channel and be recognized for that. So thank you guys, and let's go ahead and get started. We'll do specs, and then we'll do some of the features of these guns, all right? So first off, we got the Tokarev TT33. Overall length is going to be 7.6 inches. The weight, dry weight anyways, is 30.1 ounces. Barrel length is 4.6 inches, and the height is 5.3 inches. All right. On the P38, the dry weight is 28.4 ounces. The overall length is 8.62 inches. The barrel length is 4.92 inches, and the height is 5.4 inches. So overall, the P38 is a little bit bigger, and well, they're just about the same weight though. But let me show you slide to slide what these guns actually look like so you get a better idea of where they fit. Of course, not counting the beaver tail on the Walther, but you can see it is a little bit longer. Of course, it does have that longer barrel. And then width-wise, the TT33 really takes its inspiration from the 1911 and the 1903 specifically. So it's very thin, and you can see how much thinner it is than the Walther there. And then if we put them on our backs for just a minute here, you'll see that the TT33 is a little bit shorter. You do have this lanyard loop at the bottom of the mag, which kind of evens them out a little bit. So overall, they're very similar in size. What about features? So the TT33 uses a drop link barrel system that allows the barrel to disconnect and allows the slide to cycle and all of that kind of stuff. So just like a 1911, it's very thin all the way around, which is nice. Rounded off trigger guard here. Traditional magazine release, something that we're used to here in America. 8-round capacity. And what's cool is this is a all matching gun. This is a bring back from a friend of mine in World War II. 1219 on the bottom of the mag. 1219 on the slide right there. This one was made in the Izhevsk factory after the Tula plant had to be vacated, and then 1219 on the top of the slide, and also the barrel matches as well. So pretty cool. No import marks, no safeties, none of that crap. This is a GI bring back from then. The grips, they use these from anywhere from 42 to 45. Most of the ones you see now, they have a star in the middle of the grip, plastic grips, but these wooden grips were during the war. All right, more of a traditional look there. Slide serrations, this is another wartime type of deal. You can see how they're cut there. Different types of cuts for the serrations, which is pretty neat. Lanyard loop built into the frame right there. On the back, it is a hammer fire gun. All right, so you have a half cock, which fully disables the gun all the way around, trigger and everything. They have been safety checked, by the way. And then you can see the traditional hammer style, but it is a single action only. Sights, very minimal, of course, like everything was back then. All right, and the rears actually look like they're dovetailed, and then you have a fixed front sight. You can see your ejection port right here, your extractor right there. Extractor's on the right side of the gun like we're used to, and I point that out for a reason that I'm going to tell you here in a second. And then you can see your little retainer that actually holds the slide stop in on the other side of the gun. All right, pretty cool. What about features on the P38? Of course, the Germans are known for over-engineering, but generally engineering really good stuff. So what you have is something that's really ahead of its time, all right, where the Russians were taken from us, the Americans, and designs that were obviously working very well. The Germans were coming up with their own design, and you'll find this type of design later on in the Beretta M9, all right, where you have this is pretty cool. It's like you have this wedge-like block here, all right, and what happens when the slide cycles, the barrel and that block will move back to a certain extent, and then the rest of the action is finished off by the slide. So watch here, you'll see how it moves back just a little bit, and then the slide will cycle and finish the process. So the barrel really doesn't tilt down like a traditional, a 1911 or something like that. It stays fixed in place, and the block kind of locks everything back into place like that. Pretty neat design. All right. You can see the front sight here actually has a band that goes all the way around, and then it looks like a fixed front sight there. And then on the rear sight, this one looks fixed as well, almost like it's in a little dovetail or something, but I wouldn't try to adjust that. Rounded off trigger guard here. You see your slide stop is here. All right, you can see your little lever right there that attaches to it. Takedown lever right there. You have these nice Bakelite grips. They were originally using walnut, but due to constraints and just supplies in general, they switched to these Bakelite plastic grips. But over time, they kind of have this reddish tint to them, which I think looks really nice. Lanyard loop in the frame as well, and then your magazine, 8 rounds of 9mm. The TT33 is 7.62 by 25. And then you have your mag release. It's a heel style release. So what you do is you push back and pull the magazine down like that. All right. So no trigger guard release for a Walther back in this day. They would get to that much later. Extractor is on the left side of the gun. Now I'll tell you, Mrs. Headshot really appreciated this when she was doing side shots of the gun, because she wasn't getting pelted with brass. So she really liked that. This is pretty interesting too. So as far as I know, this is one of the first guns that is not a blowback design that actually uses a double to single action design. So like I just showed, you have a decocker like that. All right, right now the gun is on safe. You can pull the trigger, but nothing's going to happen. You can rack the slide even, but nothing's going to happen. All right, you put it back on fire like that, and now first shot is going to be double action only. Slide cycles, it's going to switch to single action. So pretty neat design, and like I said, ahead of its time. If you put it on safe while the hammer is up and the trigger is forward, it's going to let you pull the trigger back to a certain extent, but from there it's going to lock you out. You won't be able to fire the gun. So pretty ingenious, and like I said, ahead of its time for that time for sure. You can see your slide serrations on this side are cut off by your safety there. All right, so you only have a little bit of them exposed. On this side of the gun, you can tell you have a little bit more to grasp onto, but really that safety is your main point that you rack this slide back and chamber around anyways. Really not a whole lot on the right hand side of the gun, and you do have a little bit of beaver tail to kind of keep from the slide biting your hand. One more feature that you have on this gun is a loaded chamber indicator. So you see, I don't have a pointer right here, but you see this little device right there. Basically what happens is when a round is chambered, this pushes it back against the round, and you can see the little protrusion here that sticks out and lets you know you have a round in the chamber. So pretty neat design. And then if you take a look at the sights right there, again, the blade is a little bit taller on this gun, so a little bit easier to pick up there. And then there you go. So a lot of features on this gun. In the middle of the war too. This is, like I said, an AC-43, which is the Walther code. Basically what this gun was designed to replace was the Luger, the infamous Luger. They needed something cheaper, and they needed something a little bit easier to design. All right, the the Luger was expensive and complicated, and at times it could be finicky with ammo and stuff. So they wanted something a lot cheaper and something they could mass produce. So this is an example of a mass produced gun, all steel construction. On the other hand, with the TT33, it was designed to replace the 1895 Nagant revolver. The problem was the Russians needed as many guns as they could get, and both guns were made side by side. So the Russians made this gun from 1930 to 1952, and then there's been multiple copies made everywhere from Romania and China and so many other places. There have been copies of this gun made. From the 1930 to 1952, about 1.7 million of these were made. So from 1938 to 1945, there was about 1.2 million of these made. Obviously, after the war, with restraints on Germany and allies in 4 corners of the country, and the country divided and all this kind of stuff, it wasn't until 1957 that production of the P38 began again for the new German army, and they adopted it. They renamed it to the P1, I believe, in the 60s, and it ran all the way up until 2004. All right, in the 90s, they started looking at the P8, which is the H&K gun, but it ran all the way until 2004, which is pretty impressive. And then both of these guns, both copies, can still be found today in various countries. So these guns ran for a long time. The P38 obviously had service for a longer time, but there was a little bit of a break there for obvious reasons, where Germany could not make firearms and things like that. So pretty cool history on both of the guns. The TT33, we kind of talked about it before. They were originally made in the Tula factory, then Ijevsk and other factories. And then the Walther, you had Walther making them, Mauser, and Spreework. Walther made the most of these guns, followed by Mauser, and then Spreework made the least amount of these guns. And like I said, about 1.2 million of these guns were made. Now, one interesting thing on the Walther as well is this is an all-matching gun. All right, so you have your serial number there, 2665C. All right, the C, what they would do is they would make 10,000 copies of the gun. Once they would get to that 10,000 copy, they'd start over, and then they would add a letter. So A, B, C, D, E, you know. And this one is the 2,665 pistol, and it's designated by that C there. All right, so this was the third run in 43. All right, 2665, 2665. All right, you have your German proof markings here. You have the eagle with the swastika even. This is a legit example, all right, and a very good example, especially considering how old this gun is. All right, let's talk about breakdown here really quick, and then we will go to the range. On the Walther, make sure it's clear. You're going to lock the slide to the rear, kind of show you that. All right, rotate your lever down, and then you're going to let the slide fall forward. Make sure the slide is lined up. Pull the hammer, and you'll be able to pull it off of the gun like that. All right, and this will give you a better look at the design feature here. So basically what happens is when that locking block is pushed forward like that, it allows the slide to move. When it comes back, it locks down into place and the slide can't move. Pretty ingenious design. So that comes out all as one piece right there. And then the inside of your slide, you can see you have a hammer block there. You move the safety, and that actually prevents the hammer from being drawn all the way back and striking the firing pin. It's pretty cool. And then inside, this looks a little bit different, doesn't it? You got 2 recoil springs, one on each side there, all right, to help with the recoil and help with the slide actually get back in the battery. All right, TT33. I actually like to lean this on something while we're doing this. Makes it a little bit easier. Of course, not once you turn the cameras on. Once you turn the cameras on, everything becomes more difficult, but there we go. So basically what you're doing is you're just pushing this down where it can clear this, and then pulling it back to this point right here. You don't need to go any further with it. Alright, so then you push this slide stop out, just like that, and the front of the slide and everything is going to come off, and you just want to hold it underneath because that spring will come flying out. I'm not going to take it out. We did this all in the review. You can go over and check that out, but you can see your drop link right there, just like a 1911. Alright, barrel, ejection port, all of that good stuff. Now, one cool thing is this hammer pack and all of that comes out. Again, I show this in the full review, but this whole thing comes right out, so you can clean it or even change the pack out if it were to get damaged or anything like that. And then putting it back together, and you want to make sure your link is lined up in there, and then put your slide stop back in. And just like that, and then push this forward, just like that. Okay. Again, it's easier to do on camera. And notice how much wider the 7.62 by 25 is than the 9mm. I'm actually going to show you guys a picture, of course, of the difference in the size of the round. Ballistically, too, 7.62 by 25 moves a lot faster than the 9mm. So, just wanted to point that out while we got them apart. And then putting the P38 back together, a little bit simpler. Now, if you have your locking block pushed down like this, you're not going to be able to do it. You need to push it up where it will disengage, and then you can push it down so it doesn't come out on you. And then just line it up in the frame like that. Alright, one thing you want to make sure that you do, get that locking block and then lock it back to the rear, rotate up on the slide stop. This one is much easier to do and much more like a traditional gun with the takedown lever and all that kind of stuff. Or I say traditional, but guns like, that we see today. So, enough talking. Let's take you guys to the range with us, and we will show you how both of them did, how both of them shot, and then afterwards we'll show you the triggers. We'll talk about pros and cons, and then which one we like better today in 2019. We'll see you guys in a minute.
Oh, it's kind of sweet.
Nice. so how cool is it to be shooting something that's 75 years old? You know, who knows when the last time, well, I know when the last time this one was shot. My friend that actually owns it, he took it out, he said, you know, several years ago, but he doesn't shoot it often. This one, I have no idea. I got this one from Legacy Collectibles online, and it's just so cool, man, to have something that's 75 years old that shoots just as accurate as guns made today. Now, we did have a couple of issues with the P38. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but I don't look at these guns as the same as I do a modern production gun, or especially a carry gun, you know, where it has to be reliable, you know, and things will fail. Any man-made object made by Glock or anybody else throughout the entirety of the world will fail at some point, or can fail. But these guns, I don't look at it as like a, you know, a piece of crap because it had a few issues. But, you know, that's just me. Everybody's different, but I look at these as collectibles, pieces of history, and things you can every once in a while have a great time with. Now, if it doesn't run at all, well, then it's a piece of junk. But this one we didn't have any issues with. We didn't have a single issue out of this gun, which was impressive. We even ran some surplus ammo out of this one. So let's pull it. I know we were around 8 pounds before, 8.5 pounds. We're at 9.3. Now, let's try this one more time here. 9 pounds, 5 ounces, so a little bit heavier than what we were pulling before, but it doesn't feel like 9 pounds. Again, it's single action only. A little bit of take up, and it breaks, and then the reset, pretty much all the way out. All right. Again, it does not feel like 9 pounds. What about the Walther in double action? Let me make sure I get this right here. It's going to be heavy. I already know that. 12 pounds, 1 ounce. Let's try it one more time in double action. 11 pounds, 8 ounces. What about single action? £6 pounds, 1 ounce. One more time. 6 pounds, 5 ounces. So the trigger is a ton lighter in single action only. Let me show you the hammer here. Alright, it gets to that certain point and it just kind of surprises you a little bit when you pull it. It just breaks right there. Single action. Reset. So a really nice single action on this gun. The double action, it's a little bit quirky. You got to get used to it, but not too bad at all. Both guns at the range, like I said, did great. The P38 had a little bit of issue. The funny thing is I didn't have an issue with it. Mrs. Headshot and my oldest son had an issue with it. So what I think was going on is I think maybe a little bit of limp wristing, especially with my youngest son. I just don't think he was holding it with a firm enough grip. That's really the only thing I can say. I mean, the extraction on this one seemed a little bit weaker than the one on the TT33, but it didn't seem like it was just pooping the rounds out. It seemed like it was getting them out of there pretty good. So, you know, I can't really say why the gun was having that much of an issue. I know there was a kind of a battery issue going on with Mrs. Headshot where it wouldn't go all the way into battery. One thing I did notice just as we're sitting here talking about it, if you have the gun on safe, put the magazine in here. If you have the gun on safe, let's take the magazine out, and you go to rack the slide, sometimes it won't go into battery, kind of like that, what you just seen there. Alright, just like that. But she had it on fire the whole time. So, like I said, I don't know, maybe just a quirk, maybe a little bit of limp wristing, not sure, but we did have a couple of issues with this one, and none out of the TT33. But when you want to talk about a good time, these guns shoot true, and they just shoot amazing for something that's 75 years old. It really is incredible. The recoil is pretty much nothing. All steel guns, of course. And I can see why the Russians and the Germans like their service weapons at those times, because they're both nice examples of that. We're not going to do a uses section today. Normally I'll tell you what the gun should be used for in modern times, but you know, uses in modern times for these guns: World War II pieces of history, things you should collect, guns you should be able to shoot, hopefully, every once in a while. But what about going back then? Which gun would I rather carry back then as my main service weapon? I'm fighting in World War II. Which one would I rather have? It's a little bit split. I would rather have the ballistics of the 7.62 by 25 because it can pierce levels of armor. That round is awesome. You know, it's a fast-moving, low recoil kind of round, which is really special. When it comes to actually carrying the gun, I would rather have the P38. The reason is you can't carry this gun with a round in the chamber safely. You know, the Russians had a lot of accidental discharges or negligent discharges, however you want to look at it, because you can't carry a round in the chamber. So if you do decide to do that, now what you have to do is either carry it in half cock, which disables the pistol, which means you'll have to cock the hammer whenever you go to fire a round, or carry with a loaded magazine, no round in the chamber, which is the way most of them carried, and still you have to load a round into the chamber whenever you're ready to fire. All right, not ideal in a combat situation. With the P38, you could carry safely with a round in the chamber. All right, load one in, drop your hammer, put it to double action, and then you're ready to go. Or, I guess you could keep it like that, but it's going to move the hammer back up. All right, so whenever you go to fire, see, it keeps the hammer down on the not on the round, but it keeps the hammer in a safe position where you're still going to be firing that first shot in double action only, but you can carry it with a round in the chamber. That's the point I'm trying to make. So they both share qualities. One of, you know, each one I'd like to have from the other, but I think if it was me, I'd probably rather have the P38 as a service weapon because of that, because that saves you valuable time. But that 7.62 by 25 round is just awesome. What about pros and cons? All right, we covered a lot of this in each one of the reviews, but here really briefly, pros on the TT33. Again, we talked about the 7.62 by 25 round. That's an awesome round, easy to shoot. The removable trigger pack, and these models can be had, at least like the Sestavas and different imports, for, you know, really an awesome price. So, you know, not necessarily the World War II models, but guns like this, the Tokarev series, you can get these things at a great price. You know, so that's one of the cool things about these guns. There's so many copies and all of those kinds of things out there. You can actually own something like this, which is really nice. And then on the P38, as far as the pros, there's a lot going for this gun. I mean, the trigger and single action, the sights to me are better than the TT33. The grips and the way they feel are, you know, a little bit more natural. The grip angle is a little bit more natural than the TT33. The fact that you can carry with a round in the chamber, loaded chamber indicator, all that kind of stuff just leads, and honestly the look of it. And you can tell they were going for that kind of Luger look to it with the exposed barrel, and you know, the grip's not as swept back or anything like that, but it still has that Luger kind of look to it. Very, very iconic look, and it just is awesome, man. I don't know. It's a great shooter too. And you know, again, for something that's so old, Miss Techshot actually told me before the video, I was asking her pros and cons because we've kind of mixed them in here together. She said if she could carry this gun today, she would. So if that tells you anything, you know, even with the hiccups that we had, the gun is just fantastic. I mean, it really is. It's got a lot of great features. But there are some cons on each, and we'll start with the P38 because I got this one in my hand. I have to mention the issues we had. It was a con compared to the TT33, and it's a con anytime with a firearm. You know, like I said, I don't put as much into it because it's so old, but again, to be fair, it was a con, all right? The heel-style magazine release, you know, I prefer a standard mag release like on the TT33, so I give the nod to that. You can get used to this, but this is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, at least for, you know, us being American shooters. And then the decocker, whenever you use this thing, be prepared for it to not feel too good. All right, when you drop the hammer on this thing, it is stiff on there, trying to get that hammer back down. Again, it could be because of age, but I'm not really talking about so much of the function as the way it feels when you drop it on there, because really your thumb is right on the corner of this thing, and it does not feel nice at all. Other than that, you know, I really can't think of a lot that's wrong with this gun. Well, maybe one thing, the price. You know, the pricing on these things. I mean, I bought this one for $950. You know, they're not cheap. And that's one of the unfortunate things, is not everybody can buy a $950 gun, you know. Whereas with the Tokarev, at least most people can afford to have a little piece of history. Not that, you know, these are any cheaper. You know, I've seen these $800 to $1,000, the World War II models. But point being, they are kind of pricey, and they only go up from that price right there. I have seen some nickeled options. Actually, there's one locally where I am. It was like $500, but I didn't want to mess with the whole nickel. I wanted the original bluing and the way it looked from the factory. Other than that, I really, there's not a lot of cons that I see with the P38. Ballistically, a little bit inferior compared to the 7.62x25, but 9mm, even today, it's such a nice thing. I didn't have to buy any special ammo for this. I already had several hundreds of rounds ready to go through this, so that was convenient. But ballistically, I don't think it's as good as a 7.62x25. And then, you know, keep in mind, these cons, I'm coming from a newer perspective. A lot of this stuff is because of age, so I just want to throw that out there. But cons on the TT33, the magazines don't just pop right out of there. I mean, you literally have to pull these mags out. Again, it could be because of age, but that was one con. And then there's no safe way to carry this gun with a round in the chamber. All right, that kind of stinks, especially as a service weapon where you're depending, or could depend, on this gun to save your life. Breakdown could be a little bit cumbersome, all right, compared to the P38. The vertical grip gives you a little bit, you know, you really got to practice with this and get your draw up. I think I'm pretty good with it now, but it's just something you got to get used to. And then the trigger for Mrs. Headshot. She's not the biggest fan of the trigger setup in general. Although she shot it pretty well, it just wasn't her preferred cup of tea, especially with the P38 on the table. I mean, she really shot the heck out of the P38 and enjoyed it. So, of course, that is just our opinion on two very fine World War II weapons. Which one do we prefer? You know, I think we're both in agreement that we like the P38 a little bit more. There's things from the Tokarev, though, I would take in a heartbeat and transfer them over to the P38. But overall, I like this gun a little bit better. But I want to hear what y'all's opinion is down in the comments below. Which one do you like better and why? We will see you guys in the next one. And as always, hold them down. Kept it strapped all the time. Again, this is for a Luger, I believe, so. See a German right in front of us.